And what if I told you that there was something equal or even more valuable than gold in pre-Hispanic times? Well, here we will tell you what it was and how it survives to this day. When speaking of pre-Hispanic cultures, what always catches attention are the majestic pyramids, the wrongly called Aztecs, and a few other things. However, there are very small things that are just as important as any monumental structure or famous figure from that era. And this time, we will talk about a tiny creature that had an impact on the entire world and is native to this continent. This tiny insect, which is this one, it has a history as ancient as any pre-Hispanic culture. This insect was more renowned in antiquity than in the current era. Its scientific name is Dactylopus coccus, but obviously in every language on this earth it had different names. For example, the Mixtecs called it Induco, the Zapotecs Pilla, and today in Spanish it is called Rueda de la Muerte, Cochinilla, Cochinilla del Carmine, or Grana Cochinilla. But the most famous name is in the Nahuatl language, which is Nocheztli, meaning blood of the nopal. The translation of Nocheztli as blood of the nopal is obvious since the insect, when crushed, secretes carminic acid, a substance that is synthesized as a dye. We humans use this carminic acid for other purposes, but in these insects it is a defense mechanism to repel predators. This bean is a parasite, a pest that lodges in prickly pears and feeds on them. But we don't believe it inhabits just any prickled pear. Only a few species are to its liking for reproduction, especially prickling pears with fewer spines than other species. This species obviously has males and females, with the round ones being the females. They live on average between 3 or 4 months, while males live even shorter lives. Unlike males, females do not leave the prickly pear, whereas males depart once they had fulfilled their mating function. Obviously, in its ancient origins, Nocheztli was wild, but it was gradually domesticated. Today, there are two divisions: the wild Cochineal, consisting of approximately 8 species, which are not very pigmented, and the purple hue of this type of Cochineal is considered of poor quality. And the other one, the fine Cochineal, which was domesticated. Its color is more intense, of good quality and larger. During colonial times, existence of the wild and the fine Cochineal provoked legal disputes. Sometimes it was adulterated by mixing wild Cochineal with fine Cochineal, as well as ash, clay, flour, and other substances. To combat these fraudulent practices, laws and penalties were enacted, ranging from fines, suspension of activities, confiscations, banishments, corporal punishment, or even the death penalty. In fact, in 1572, the position of judge of Cochineal was created in Puebla and Oaxaca. They carefully inspected the Cochineal before sending it to Veracruz before a judge and a scribe, prior to its shipment to Seville. Obviously, before being exported worldview, it first spread across the continent. It has even been found in South America, in ancient Peru. However, DNA records on the continent show that its most probably origin occurred in Mexico and the Oaxaca region. The domesticated cochineal collected for perhaps thousands of years is harvested directly from prickle pear cactus, or as is done today in greenhouses, where prickly pear is allowed to grow and then cut, with the pieces hung up. There, the cochineal reproduces, and the insect is allowed to move to other prickly pears for reproduction. Upon the insect's death, it is dried, and, once dried, collected and put up for sale. But there is still much more to tell. We humans use its properties by grinding the insect to extract the red powder, pigment, which many today call Mexican red. This dye is 100% natural and serves many purposes. In pre-Hispanic times, this dye was even more valuable than gold, and in the colonial era, in terms of export importance, it was only behind gold and silver exports. That's why some call it red gold. At the level of exports to Europe, it was a multi-million-dollar business, over which the Spaniards obviously wanted to have total monopoly. That's why they took great care to prevent other powers from seizing control of cochineal. To achieve this, the Spaniards claimed that the dye was extracted from plants or seeds, not from cochineal. They tried to prevent live insects from being taken to Europe to avoid potential plagiarism and cultivation by other powers. And of course, its value was already significant since the pre-Hispanic era. Cochineal was a form of tribute, as recorded in codices such as the one we see here. For example, the Mexicas, also known as the Aztecs, subjected present-day Oaxaca, calling it Oaxaca in Nahuatl. As tribute, populations in the area were required to pay with sacks of cochineal. Now, the use of the dye extracted from the cochineal insect since pre-Hispanic times had many rich uses and symbolic meanings. Obviously, these uses had deeper significance here than in the rest of the world, even today. For these cultures, the red produced by the insect was associated with blood, power, the sun, and fire. The pigment was very versatile, encapsulated in the Nahuatl phrase, Intili Intlapali, which means black and red ink. This phrase itself symbolized wisdom and the transmission of knowledge. Indeed, cochineal was used to paint many codices with its red color and various shades obtained by mixing its carmine color with other natural substances. Thus, cochineal became a means of imparting knowledge to future generations that needed to be recorded. Naturally, it was also used to dye countless textiles, as it still is today. But not only that, the pigment has also been found in murals, pottery, and various other uses. For example, Bernardino de Sahagún mentioned that even in Mexican markets, cochineal was sold in the form of Nocheztli, cochineal tortilla. So, if this is true, they would have been tortillas made from cochineal. And not only that, but even in the colonial era and up to today, its uses have diversified. In the colonial era, it began to be used in gastronomy. It was used to color sugar from sprinkling on bread and cookies, even for tamales, in cream with rose petals, to tinned jellies, jams, ice creams, yogurt, cherries, candies, preserved fruits, jerky, soaps, beverages like mezcal, beer, atole, and water. Even today to seal beef, chicken, and fish, and to make medicines and cosmetics. And let's not forget the use that wealthy Europeans made of it, and it's used by artists, especially in paintings. Famous painters like El Greco, Van Gogh, and many more created paintings using cochineal, but its fascinating history has a dark side. Firstly, overexploitation of cochineal led to its displacement to the point of almost extinction when artificial dyes began to emerge. This not led to less demand and fewer job opportunities, putting its production at risk, given that the entire process of caring for and maintaining cochineal in greenhouses today is much more expensive than simply acquiring artificial colorants. There have also been uses with it since colonial times, not just with pirated cochineal. Only a few years after the fall of Tenochtitlan, the Spanish began to control its production, while for the first part of the 17th century, the most intense production of cochineal was located in areas of Tlaxcala, Oaxaca and Puebla. It wasn't until the second half of the 17th century that 99% of cochineal was produced in Oaxaca, then called Antequera. However, its industry produced labor conflicts, as while there were population and entire families in various parts of New Spain dedicated to breeding cochineal. The majority of benefits went to the Spanish. This caused several indigenous communities to prefer stop cultivating the insect due to the inequality of benefits they received from its sale. And well, conditions are not better today. In many cases, although there are still producers, they are very few, and several of them subsist with their own resources without government support. Like the case of the Cochineal Museum in Oaxaca, where this sample was obtained. It consists of 100 grams of cochineal and is priced at 250 pesos. But if you search for cochineal, for example, on an online marketplace, you'll see that just 50 grams, half of this, can be triple the price or even close to 19,000 pesos. There is also a difficult market existence where sometimes the effort invested by the producers is not equal to the profit obtained, as obtaining these grams requires months of work. Plus, there are extremely cheap options of artificial paintings and dyes against which cochineal cannot compete. Therefore, having something like this in your hands is a treasure even if it's never ground to extract the dye. It's a tangible example of the past 500 years ago, of how the insect was used, its symbolism, its history, and the significance it has had in the war. So, did you get to know the cochineal, its importance, and its uses?